in this newborn light. In this newborn light came to earth. And for that, we have hope. May our souls, our very beings, breathe hope. Hello to everyone on Zoom. We have people in Colorado and Washington and down in Bonita and all over the place watching. Oh, and Nevada. Lonnie's on today. So hello to all of you Zoom-maculate people. It's good to see you. Good that you're here with us today. It's a little cozy in the house today. We have some of our Christmas decorations up. We have a garland going around two parts of two rooms with ornaments hanging from the lighted garland, and we might turn the camera after the gathering to show you. Some of you have seen it before. These are ornaments we gave Megan and Camden as they were growing up, so one per year. So the first three are Megan's first 3 years, since she's older than Camden by 3 years, and then Megan, Camden, all the way around until, when did we stop? When they told us to? That's enough, Mom and Dad. No, until they turned about 18, 20. Yeah, we have ornaments for them. A lot of them represent their stage of life at the time, their hobbies, their interests, things we were doing as a family, represented by those ornaments. And so hopefully you too are putting up something special in your house to make it a little more cozy, to bring to remembrance what this season is all about. Relationship, family, love, hope, peace, love, joy, and of course, the birth of our Savior. Today is the first Sunday of Advent. And traditionally, Advent is a season of expectation and waiting. If you've ever been around a family, a husband and wife who are just about ready to have their first child, and maybe even their fifth or sixth child, but especially the first one, there's a lot of preparation, isn't there? A lot of expectation. The doctor may have given you a tentative birth date, when the baby was going to come, but is it ever exact? No, it's just, when will the baby come? Oh, it's near. It'll come. There's a lot of expectation, and you have to be patient, but it's eager patience, and there's a lot of preparation as well. It's kind of the same thing, and it makes sense because Advent leads up to the celebration of Christmas, which is when we commemorate the birth of our Savior, Jesus. But it's also a time of preparation and expectation and waiting of the second coming, when Jesus will return yet again to earth. It's a season of expectation and waiting, preparation and anticipation. We're going to find that some of the Revised Common Lectionary texts for Advent, as I was reading through the upcoming weeks of some of these texts, I was a little bewildered and perplexed because some of them are apocalyptic texts which are referring to what we would call the end time. But the second coming of Jesus. And we like talking about Jesus coming again, but there are texts that picture it and frame it and describe it in ways that it's scary. It's something that we don't want to happen, at least the way we read it or the way we interpret it. It's scary, it's frightening. But we're going to see that this might give us a different way of viewing Advent, a different way of viewing the incarnation, disrupt our usual way of looking at it. These texts will encourage us to watch for God to be revealed, not just later, but in our world now, adding a new layer of insight about the Christmas season. Emmanuel, God with us. I like that. Because it's not Emmanuel, God will be with us, or Emmanuel, God was with us, and he was with us in the form of a human in Jesus, and he will be with us again, but he is with us now, here and now. This Advent, we're reorienting ourselves to thinking about and living in time, space and time now differently. And our text for the day shows that. Instead of just having a future focus, we anticipate God's presence in the present. God with us now. Rather than just thinking we must be prepared or ready for God to enter the world later, we have hope and assurance that ready or not, Jesus has come and is present now by his Spirit and will return in glory. Diana Butler Bass, one of my favorite writers, as she was getting ready for Advent, and she does a lot of writing, and she sends out posts every week. And so her posts for the next few weeks are going to be about Advent. And she said that she's looking forward to a beautiful Advent. She says, honestly, I need to be reminded of beauty. Yes, we do. Just a few moments before I came up here, I was about ready to go out the front door and something was happening out there. Nothing huge, but it wasn't beautiful. It wasn't beautiful. Sadly, our neighbor was yelling at his kids. And that's just like this. We see unbeautiful things a lot, don't we? Just walking down the street, just in a normal day-to-day, running around and living and seeing what's happening in the world, seeing what's happening on our political scene here in this country. It's not beautiful, is it? So I'm with Diana. We need to be reminded of beauty. She says, it's easy to be overcome by despair and destruction. Every day we're besieged by so much ugliness, corruption, bigotry, hatred, conflict, and war. And how, I don't know if the word sad is the right word, but with what happened on October 7th in Israel and is continuing on now, it's almost like the Ukraine-Russian war is like, oh, that's still going on? There's so much going on, and we don't even sometimes even think about it. There's a lot of ugliness, conflict and war. So much so that it's hard to remember the loveliness of our lives and creation. Indeed, even the word beauty, she writes, might seem shallow, self-interested, or even meaningless amid the suffering of these days. How can we sing about peace, joy, faith, and hope now, in the midst of all this? She says, my soul hurts with the incongruity of it all. Thomas Troger writes, in a world filled with terrors, the heart longs for a vision of divine beauty. And when the church fails to attend to beauty, the life of faith often becomes grim and onerous. We can find ourselves in dark corners if we don't hang on to the beauty of God, the beauty that is represented by Advent, especially in the words hope, peace, joy, and love. Advent, with its tensions and contrasts, Diana continues, is a season of art. Think of the poetry and the music and visual images that it's brought over the centuries. I find it amazing how many different Christmas songs there are. Working in the marketplace, working at a Home Depot, working there for 8 hours a day, listening to Christmas music because they play it. And there are so many renditions of all the songs. But if we think about Christmas in this time, there is so much beauty and tradition and art. Think of poetry and music and the visual images it's brought forth over the centuries. During these weeks, the Christian imagination also turns toward humility, paradox, tenderness, waiting, and as Diana writes, the maternity of God. We have to remember Jesus was born of a woman. Advent is the antithesis of all the imperial and authoritarian temptations of the faith. It's the very embodiment of mystery, and its language is loveliness. Diana's a good writer. This is the season where the world we know runs headlong into the dream of God. It is the season of deep night that promises endless light. There's no way to explain this and no theology that can fully express the wonder of these weeks, and I concur with her. These words, hope, peace, joy, and love, are beautiful words, filled with wonder and beauty. And when people embody and live the reality of those words, hope, peace, joy, and love, it's even more beautiful. Because we can think about the meanings and maybe what it looks like, but when you see it in action, when you see it in somebody or even in yourself, it's even more beautiful. And that's what Advent is all about, these words of beauty and mystery and wholeness. And we anticipate when these words are going to become more visible and even more solid and real. They're real now, but so often we can question their realness or their power, especially when we look around us. As I was looking at these words, these themes for Advent, it dawned on me that they can be quite unquantifiable. These words are transcendent, but also tenuous. They're magical and yet mysterious. They're powerful, but also very perplexing. These words, hope, peace, joy, and love. We can be hopeful one moment, and then the next have our hopes dashed. Has that ever happened to you? So filled with hope, and then, oh man, it didn't happen. It didn't come to pass. My hopes are dashed. How do you measure hope anyway? Where does the power of hope come from? Does it come from within, from us? Well, for a recovering pessimist, that's not very comforting. If it's got to come from within here, whew, there is no hope. Does the power come from the thing we're hoping for or hoping in? Because so many of those things are here today and gone tomorrow. What about peace? What is peace? Peace almost seems like a joke nowadays. Like the most unattainable thing on the planet, in the universe, is peace. What does it look like? Is it just a ceasefire? When the shooting and the bombing stops for peace talks? Peace talks. Boy, okay. I'm a little cynical right now. When the shooting and the bombing stops for peace talks, is there really peace in the land? Or does this peace, when the shooting stops for a minute, only reveal the destruction, the pain, the suffering, the misery, the heartache, the loss, the injury, death, and desperate need? Even for the few days where there was no fighting, in Israel, it did not look very peaceful. Even when peace is declared by both sides, is there not still unrest? Don't we still just wait for the next skirmish, an outbreak of hostility? We still see oppression and injustice, inequality and suffering. It's like peace is unquantifiable. What about joy? Can you measure joy? I'll put a cup of joy in my oatmeal this morning. I measured it out. There it is. It's called brown sugar. Okay, I didn't put a cup of brown sugar in it, but can you measure joy? Some corporations, companies, and commercial sellers of goods and services think they can bottle joy. Serums and products to make us look younger and put hair back on our head. As you can tell, I'm not falling for that one. They want to sell you joy, mass produce it, package it, slap it on a lunchbox, and convince us that once we have it, there will be joy. All these commercials during Christmas time with big bows on cars out in the driveway. Santa must have had a hell of a time getting that down the chimney. Yeah, he drove it there. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Rudolph has a V8. Joy is a real thing, but it can be elusive, can't it? What once brought us joy can break down on the side of the road. It can go out of style, or we can just get tired of it. So what is the true source of hope and peace and joy? And isn't it somewhat unquantifiable? What about love? Oh, save the best for last. Talk about unquantifiable. It's weird because you know it when you see it, right? You know it when you see love between two people, or love expressed in a act of humility and selflessness. You see it and you know it, and yet it's still, I always love the line, I love my wife and I love tacos. So what is love? I really do love tacos, but I love my wife more. And I know of families, and I think my dear sister Ariana is listening in, because I saw Tito on the line. Families where one family member say, I love you, and the other one says, I love you more. How do we, how are we measuring that? How is it a contest? To the moon and back. I love you to the moon and back. Well, that's not good enough. I love you this much, you know. But we do that, don't we? Even Ann and I sometimes, I love you this much, and then this much, and then this much, and then we're like, we just love each other. She's snickering behind the curtain. But I think you get my drift, my point. Love. How do you measure love? These words are somewhat unquantifiable. That's why I called this series an Unquantifiable Advent. Anne gave me a weird look when I told her what the title was, but I think she's coming around. Hope, peace, joy, love. These words can be slippery, elusive, mysterious, transcendent, unquantifiable. But I will say this now. They are all qualified, quantified, realized, and personified in Jesus. You want to know what hope, peace, joy, and love looks like, lives like, smells like, acts like, is at its core, at its reality. It is the person of Jesus. He is hope. He is what we hope for. He is peace. He is joy. He is love. And he wants nothing more than for us to live in who he is, to realize that hope, peace, love, and joy. And we'll be talking about those this week. So here's this oddball text that was chosen by somebody at some point in time to be put into the Revised Common Lectionary on this date, the first day of Advent, which when we talk about hope. Mark 13, verses 24 through 37. And this is kind of jumping in the middle of Mark 13, where Jesus is talking in apocalyptic terms about a specific event, and that is the destruction of the temple and the absolute ruining of Jerusalem. And the disciples ask, when will this be? When will this take place? When? We talk about the second advent, the second coming of Jesus. What's our first question? When? When will this take place? And he gives some descriptions. And then in verse 24, at that time, after the anguish of those days, the days leading up to and including the destruction of the temple. At that time, after the anguish of those days, the sun will be darkened. Already I've lost hope. What's going on here? The sun will be darkened, the moon will give no light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. If the sun is actually darkened, we're going to be in a boatload of trouble. If the stars fall from the sky, and some of those stars are bigger than our planet, so I don't think this is going to happen as much as Jesus is saying. All those things that you hold sure, that you see every night in the sky, the stars, the sun comes out every day, and lights the moon, and there's these cycles and the harvest, everything that we kind of rely upon and depend upon, so much so that we hardly even think about it because it's so sure. There's something more sure than that. There's something even more sure than that. And that is his return. That gives us hope. Then everyone will see the Son of Man coming into clouds. Oh, sorry, there's a basket there. Then everyone will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds with great power and glory. And he will send out his angels to gather his chosen ones from all over the world, from the farthest ends of the earth and heaven. Next slide. Now, to learn a lesson from the fig tree. This kind of begins to give us a little bit of a picture of when, kind of. Now learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branches bud and its leaves begin to sprout, you know the summer is near. In the same way, when you see all these things taking place, you can know that his return is very near, right at the door. You talk about a slippery word. Near is also one of those. Diana Butler Bass kind of highlights these words, and I want to share some of that today, because she says when it comes to today's reading, Christians often fixate on time, right? Like, if I can decipher and interpret all that Jesus is saying, there's going to be some calendar behind it where I can kind of put an X on the date and know when it's going to happen. We fixate on the when. When will God come into the world bringing peace and justice? It's not a bad desire or question. When? When are the last days? When will the apocalypse occur? I don't know if it's the best question, though. Modern Christians aren't the only ones wondering when the kingdom of God will begin. Indeed, while standing outside the temple, as I mentioned in the early part of this chapter, Jesus and the disciples are talking about that very thing. Not about the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. Okay. Talking about the destruction of the temple, which at that time, in their mind, that was the end of the world. Because it's as absolutely devastating that the World Trade Center and the towers that fell. Even here on the other side of the country, our attachment wasn't so much to the buildings, but at the devastating and pain and suffering of the loss of the human beings. But to have the very center, because remember, a lot of the Jews and the religious people, that is where God resides, in the temple. It's holy, it's sacred. And so much of everything they did revolved around the temple. And that when that was destroyed, or even talking about it being destroyed, it's the end of the world. And it wasn't just the temple. Rome came and sacked and ransacked Jerusalem. That's why he said, you don't want to... Where's my Bible real quick? Does anybody have a Bible? You have a Bible, Tina. Of course you do. Oh, my goodness. You all have Bible. I do, too. It's just in my back pocket on an electronic thing. It would just take a second. 13:1. And then as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Teacher, what manner of stones and what buildings are here? And look how beautiful it is." And Jesus answered and said, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left upon another that shall not be thrown down." And it talks about, "Take heed that no one deceive you, because many will come in my name and saying, 'I am he,' and he will deceive many." And then it gives like the signs of the times. And then it says, "Let him who is on the housetop not go down into the house, nor enter to take anything out of his house." You know, when there's a fire in the house, they always say, "Don't stop and get your belongings," because you could burn. I think this is where it started. "Let him who is on the housetop not go down into his house, nor enter to take anything out of the house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in winter." So what was going on here is saying this is going to be so destructive, so massive. It's going to be the end of our world as we know it. Don't get caught up in the things. Get out. Jesus and his disciples are talking about this end. At the outset of this chapter, his friends ask, "Tell us when this will be." And Jesus replies that difficult times are coming. There will be wars and persecutions and a great sacrilege, right? The abomination that makes desolate. After that suffering, he assured them, the Son of Man will come. But Jesus doesn't say the time. He doesn't just say the time or the place. But yet he does. He instructed them to pay attention to the fig tree, which is what we see here. Learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branches bud and its leaves begin to sprout, you will know that the summer is near. In other words, a season is coming. A time is at hand. So when you're in the spring, in a certain amount of time, the summer will come, right? The summer is near. That's a time factor, isn't it? Nearness in terms of time, but we also know of nearness in terms of space, distance, proximity, a place. And he talks about that as well. So also when you see these things take place, or in the same way, when you see all these things taking place, you will know that his return is very near. Not so much in time, but in proximity, right at the door. Because right at the door is a nearness of proximity. Not just time, but of place. He is very near at the gates. Near is both time and place. Time is approaching, and the place is close by. Time and place, Diana says. God's dream is arriving, and God's dream is at hand. We human beings live in both time and place. We think of them as things we can describe and measure and fix. We experience them physically and bodily. Time and place aren't just a dream, they're real, aren't they? Cassie just left for work. Time is a real thing. If she's late for work, she'll be very aware of the realness of time. But I don't think she'll be late. I don't think she's ever been late to this job, anyway. And you're sitting in a chair right here, right now. It's not a dream, right? Time and place is real. They aren't something we can't see or know. We understand the passing of time and dwelling in place. And we know that sacred time, though, sacred time and location aren't the same as ours. Unquantifiable. We can't measure those. Diana, along with her few quotes of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, talk about a third advent. So you have the first advent, Jesus coming at his birth, and what we call the second advent, his second coming, but there's something in the middle. It's right where we are, in the middle of those two things. Because we weren't there back then, and we're not there in the future yet. We're right here, right now. And Jesus arrives in our world and in our lives on a daily basis, on a constant basis, in a never-leaving basis. We don't live back then and there when Jesus was born, and we don't live in the upcoming when and where at the time of Jesus' return. So that can be kind of frustrating, can't it? Oh, how cool it would have been, We kind of watch TV programs to see what it might look like. And we can't wait. We hope and long for Jesus to return. So it can be frustrating exercise of celebrating two times and places we can't know or experience right now. Diana says we need an advent of now and here, an advent of near. And I think that's the only way we can have hope. We have hope in Jesus that he'll return, but we need him in us right here, right now, to give birth to that hope, to make it feel real, to make it feel right. Let's go on and finish up our text. I tell you the truth, this generation will not pass from the scene before all these things take place. Again, hearkening to the destruction of the temple. Mark wrote in the 70s AD, most likely after the destruction of the temple. So we have Jesus probably 40 years before the destruction of the temple, and then Mark writes later. So there's this overlap of things that Jesus actually said, and then Mark, already having experienced the destruction of the temple, laying that over his writing. Heaven and earth will disappear, but my words will never disappear. Again, wait, heaven and earth are going to disappear? Wait, isn't God's kingdom coming down to earth? This is where we kind of have to know what the way they talked back yonder, back then. In other words, my words are more real. As real as heaven and earth are, my words are more reliable. He's not saying, I'm going to wipe out heaven and earth. No. My words are more reliable. Next slide. However, no one knows the day or the hour when these things will happen, not even the angels in heaven or the Son himself. Only the Father knows. And since you don't know when that time will come, be on guard. Stay alert. Circle be on guard. Circle stay alert. Next slide. The coming of the Son of Man can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. When he left home, he gave each of his servants instructions about the work they were to do, and he told the gatekeepers to watch for his return. Watch for his return. Why? Because he was never coming back? No, because he was coming back. Watch for his return. You too must keep watch. Some translations say, therefore, stay awake. Stay awake. Keep awake. Therefore, you too must keep watch. For you don't know when the master of the household will return, in the evening, at midnight, before dawn, or daybreak. That word watch, it's an active word. It's a participatory word. It's not like a mother going out to have coffee with a friend or run errands and say, honey, watch the kids. What does Pops do? Sits in his recliner, kicks up his feet. My first thought was reading a book, but no. Watching TV, right? And every once in a while glancing up. You know, if it's quiet, you think the kids are okay, they're not hurt. But if it's quiet, then they're probably into something. But it's not like this kind of watching, being so involved in something else and only glancing up occasionally looking up. This is keep watch, vigilance, readiness, attentiveness, alertness, like a security guard. Wait a second. I've seen a lot of security guards. Not like that. There are some good security guards, I must say. More like a sentry, S-E-N-T-R-Y. Not a century, not a 100-year-old guard, although some of them look 100 years old, but a sentry at his post, right? Not just playing on his phone, checking texts, or whatever it was, especially back in the war days, No, they are on the wall, they're circling the camp, and they are alert, attentive, ready. That kind of watch. What does that look like for us, though? I would say it's living out this hope, peace, joy, and love. It's not like when the cat's away, the mice will play, or when the parents are away, the kids will play, and you kind of know when mom and dad are coming back home, so you clean everything up, right? If you didn't know when mom and dad were coming home and they came in surprisingly or unannounced or ahead of schedule, you're busted. And I've heard some sermons like that. It's almost like, you better be good, or Jesus is going to write you off the list. I don't know if it's so much as that as Jesus wanting us to so want the ultimate reality of the hope, peace, joy, and love that we have only in part. Because as humans, our hope falters, our peace is non-existent, our joy sucks, and love is tenuous as humans. But if we're always vigilant, ready, watching, we're going to be living out these things. And when Jesus comes, it won't be a surprise. Even when we don't know when. Because we already know where. And that's right inside us. You too must keep watch, for you don't know when the master of the household will return. This thought just came to me. Keep the house the way Jesus would be welcome and at home in. Because we don't know when he's coming. Ann and I typically keep the house clean because we never know when somebody, ding dong, the pop in. It's like keeping our lives, maybe not full, sometimes they're not full of hope, but full of hope and peace and joy. We're not going to be caught off guard. We're going to be alert. We're going to be watching. Don't let him find you sleeping when he arrives without warning. I say to you what I say to everyone. Watch for him. Watch for him. Why? Why watch? Because he might come back? No. Because he is coming back. He says, I am coming back. And that gives us hope. Not the fleeting, fickle, fluffy hope, but quantifiable hope. May you always keep watch. Stay alert. He is near. Now and then. Here and there. May your soul breathe